At 9:02 a.m., I was escorted out of Keystone Dynamics like a criminal. By 11:55 a.m., I was on a Zoom call with their biggest investor. Holding the true source code, my code in my hands, I didn't plan on revenge. They begged for it. My name is Morgan Blake, and until this morning, I was the invisible backbone of a billion-dollar lie. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and Trey's cologne, something expensive that couldn't mask the stench of his ambition. I'd been summoned at 8:50 a.m. No context. Just Morgan, conference room B, urgent. My fingers were still twitching from the all-nighter I'd pulled fixing a critical memory leak in Pathfire's inference engine, the same engine that made Keystone Dynamics worth anything at all. Trey Mathis sat across from me, his Stanford MBA practically radiating from his pressed shirt and practiced smile. 6 months as my manager, and he still couldn't explain what a neural network actually did. Beside him, Cheryl from HR clutched a manila folder like a life preserver. "Morgan," Trey began, his voice dripping with that fake Silicon Valley empathy they must teach in business school. "You've been such a valuable part of the Keystone family." Been, past tense, my stomach dropped. "But as we scale toward our Series C, we need to evolve our engineering culture. Bring in fresh perspectives, new blood." He gestured vaguely, as if I were a line of outdated code he was refactoring out of existence. I wanted to laugh. Fresh perspectives. I'd built Pathfire from scratch, spending weekends and nights in my apartment when Keystone wouldn't approve overtime. Every elegant solution, every optimization that made our competitors look like they were running on dial-up. That was me. Not the team. Me. "Your contributions have been noted," Cheryl added, sliding a separation agreement across the table. "We're prepared to offer 2 weeks severance." 2 weeks, after 5 years of bleeding myself dry for this company? After creating the very technology they were about to sell for billions? "My code?" I started. "The company's code," Trey corrected, his smile never wavering. "You were always part of the team, Morgan, a valued part, but it's time for Keystone to grow beyond any one person's vision." The irony was suffocating. My vision was the only reason Keystone had anything to grow beyond, but I saw it clearly now. Eli Park, the hotshot MIT grad Trey had brought in last month, asking me endless questions about Pathfire's architecture. I'd trained my own replacement, thinking I was being a good mentor. "Your access will be terminated immediately," Cheryl continued. "Security will escort you to collect your personal items." And there it was. 9:02 a.m. on the conference room clock, the exact moment my loyalty became worthless. Rick from security, the same Rick who joked with me about his daughter's coding camp just yesterday, waited outside the door. He couldn't meet my eyes as he walked me to my desk like a criminal. My colleagues pretended to be absorbed in their screens, but I felt their sideways glances, their relief that it wasn't them. My desk was already boxed up. They'd done it while I was in the meeting. Even my succulents were wrapped in newspaper, suffocating in the dark. 5 minutes, Rick mumbled. But I didn't need 5 minutes. Everything that mattered wasn't in this sterile open-plan office. The real Pathfire, the one that actually worked, the one I'd built with my own hands on my own time, lived on the development environment in my apartment. They could take my badge, my parking spot, my corporate laptop. They could scrub my name from every commit in their repository. They just forgot one thing: they never owned my nights and weekends. They never owned the code I wrote at 2 a.m. in my kitchen, fueled by passion and Red Bull, solving problems they didn't even know they had. As Rick escorted me through the lobby, past the stupid "Innovation Lives Here" mural, I kept my head high. Let them think they'd won. Let Trey explain to investors why Pathfire suddenly stopped learning efficiently. Let Eli try to decipher dependencies I'd never fully documented in the corporate repo. They'd erased me from their story. They had no idea I still held the pen. The drive home was a blur. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, my brain cycling through the same loop: shock, rage, disbelief, repeat. By the time I reached my apartment in Capitol Hill, the adrenaline had crashed into something hollow and nauseating. I dropped the pathetic box of desk plants by the door and stood in my living room, suddenly aware of how quiet everything was at 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. The rest of Denver was working, being productive, having careers that weren't just deleted with a corporate smile. My laptop sat on the kitchen table where I'd left it at 4 a.m. this morning. Still warm. Still logged into my personal development environment. The irony made me laugh, a sharp, bitter sound that didn't sound like me. While I was fixing their memory leak on their time, my real work had been waiting here all along. I sank into the chair and opened my IDE. There it was, Vanta. The name had come to me during one of those 3 a.m. coding sessions when Pathfire's limitations were driving me insane. Vanta like Vanta Black. The darkest substance ever created. Absorbing all light. That's what my version did to their pale imitation. It absorbed every inefficiency, every clunky workaround, every compromise I'd been forced to make within Keystone's bureaucratic constraints. The code was beautiful, clean, elegant in ways that Pathfire could never be because I'd built it without Trey breathing down my neck about quick wins and shipping velocity, without budget constraints forcing me to use suboptimal solutions, without a committee questioning every architectural decision. I scrolled through the neural network architecture, remembering each breakthrough, the revolutionary approach to backpropagation that cut training time by 80%, the self-optimizing loss functions that adapted to data patterns in real time, the distributed processing framework that made Pathfire look like it was running on a graphing calculator. This wasn't just an improvement, this was a completely different beast. My phone buzzed. Lena's name appeared on the screen, my lawyer friend from college who'd helped me review Keystone's employment contract years ago. Morgan, I heard, Samantha from Keystone's Legal just called me about your separation agreement. Are you okay? Define okay, I said, my voice raw. Have you signed anything? No, I walked out. Good. Listen, I'm pulling up your original employment contract now. We need to talk about your IP rights. My heart rate spiked. Lena, I built something, on my own time, my own equipment. It's significant. There was a pause. I could hear her typing. Your contract has a standard IP assignment clause, but and this is important, it only covers work done using company resources or during company time. Anything you developed independently is yours. Even if it's related to what I did for them. Did you use any of their code? Their data? Their servers? I thought carefully. No, I built it from scratch. Different architecture, different implementation. I even used my own datasets for training public sources and synthetic data I generated myself. Then it's yours, Morgan, 100% yours. The words hit me like cold water. Mine, not theirs, mine. Lena, this thing I built, it makes their version look like a toy, and they have no idea it exists. Keep it that way for now. Document everything, timestamps, development logs, proof it was built on your personal equipment, and Morgan, don't do anything impulsive. You're angry, and you have every right to be, but I'm not going to burn the building down, I said, staring at Vanta's elegant code structure. I'm going to do something much worse. What's that? I'm going to succeed without them. After Lena hung up, I sat in the afternoon light filtering through my kitchen window, really seeing my work for what it was. Not just better code, not just revenge, but freedom. I pulled up my development logs, every commit time-stamped on weekends and late nights, every breakthrough documented on my personal machine. 5 years of innovation that Keystone had ignored because it didn't fit their quarterly roadmap. They thought they'd erased me from Pathfire's story. They had no idea I'd been writing a different story all along. My laptop screen glowed with possibility. Vanta wasn't just my creation, it was my proof. Proof that Morgan Blake wasn't just part of the team. Proof that the real innovation had been happening in a one-bedroom apartment while Keystone played startup theater. I opened a new terminal window and began typing. Not code this time, a plan. They'd taken my job, my security badge, my corporate identity. But they'd left me with something far more dangerous, my intelligence, my invention, and nothing left to lose. I didn't sleep that first night. Instead, I did what I'd always done when the world felt unstable. I coded. But this time was different. I wasn't fixing someone else's problems. I was architecting justice. By 3 a.m. Wednesday, I had a plan. Not the messy, emotional revenge fantasy that had consumed me on the drive home, but something surgical, calculated. I spread my old Keystone documentation across the kitchen table, the training materials I'd created for Eli Park just 2 weeks ago. Poor Eli. He thought he was learning the system. He'd only scratched the surface. The deeper dependencies I'd built into Pathfire were invisible unless you knew where to look. Like the cascade validation system that prevented model drift, it appeared simple in the corporate repo, but it relied on specific data structures I'd never fully documented. Without understanding the underlying mathematical principles, any modification would trigger subtle degradation, not enough to crash immediately, but enough to slowly poison the model's accuracy. I pulled up my Vanta repository and began cleaning the codebase, preparing it for eyes that weren't mine. Every function documented, every algorithm explained with academic precision. If I was going to prove ownership, it had to be bulletproof. Then I started writing, not code a white paper. Vulnerabilities in Modern Neural Learning Architectures, a case study in recursive dependency failures. Academic, theoretical, no company names, no proprietary information, just a careful analysis of how certain architectural patterns that happen to match Pathfire's design exactly could fail catastrophically under specific conditions. The kind of paper that would make any competent engineer look at their own system and think, oh shit. My phone rang at 7 a.m. Talia Rodriguez. Morgan, I heard about Keystone. Those idiots. Talia and I had started at Keystone together 5 years ago. She'd left after year 2 to become CTO at RivLogic, a medical AI diagnostics company. We'd stayed in touch, meeting for coffee every few months to complain about the industry and share war stories. How's the job search going? She asked. I'm not searching, I said, saving my white paper draft. I'm planning. Planning what? Remember how I always complained that Pathfire was held back by corporate bureaucracy? You mean every single coffee meeting we've ever had. I built something better, on my own time. It's significant. Talia. The line went quiet. Talia understood tech at a level most CTOs didn't. She'd know what I meant by significant. How much better? 10 times more efficient, self-optimizing, distributed processing that actually works, and it's mine, not theirs. Jesus, Morgan, do you have documentation, proof of independent development? Every keystroke logged, every commit time-stamped on nights and weekends. I want to see it. Not now, I know you need time. But Morgan, if this is what you say it is. She paused. RivLogic is looking to upgrade our diagnostic AI. We have funding, real funding, not Keystone's venture capital house of cards. My heart skipped. Talia. I'm not offering anything yet, but clean up that code, document everything, and when you're ready, let's talk. And Morgan, whatever you're planning for Keystone, be smart about it. After she hung up, I stared at my white paper draft. Be smart. But smart didn't mean passive. Smart meant understanding that the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was revelation. I went back to Eli's training documents, studying them like a general planning a campaign. Every shortcut I'd taught him, every simplification I'd made to help him understand. Each one was a tiny bomb waiting to go off when the system was pushed beyond normal parameters. Then I remembered something that made me smile for the first time since Tuesday morning. The investor demo. Keystone's big Series C pitch was in 3 weeks. They'd be pushing Pathfire hard, showing off its capabilities, stress testing it in front of the people holding the checkbooks. Stress tests that would hit every single one of those hidden dependencies. I opened a new document and began mapping out failure scenarios. Not to cause them, I wouldn't touch their systems, but to predict them, to document them, to be ready when Trey's fresh perspectives collided with 5 years of intricate engineering they didn't understand. By noon, I had 40 pages of analysis, vulnerabilities they'd never see coming, edge cases they'd never test for, the exact points where their simplified understanding would betray them. I wasn't going to sabotage Keystone. I didn't need to. They'd sabotage themselves the moment they decided Morgan Blake was replaceable. All I had to do was wait, and prepare, and build something so undeniably superior that when their tower finally fell, everyone would see who had really been holding it up. I saved my work, backed it up to 3 different drives, and finally allowed myself to feel it not just anger, but anticipation. They wanted to erase me from their story. Fine. I'd write my own. 2 weeks passed. I polished my white paper until it gleamed with academic legitimacy. Every vulnerability I outlined was theoretical, hypothetical, but anyone who knew Pathfire's architecture would recognize the blueprint instantly. I created a pseudonymous account on Arxiv and uploaded it on a Thursday evening. Neural Network Cascade Failures When Dependencies Become Liabilities, by M. Brighton. Close enough to my name for those who knew me, distant enough for plausible deniability. Then I waited. The first ripple came from a machine learning forum I frequented. Someone had linked my paper with the comment, "This sounds exactly like the architecture those Keystone guys have been bragging about. Should they be worried?" By Friday afternoon, it had been downloaded 300 times. By Monday, that number had tripled. I was sitting in a Lodo coffee shop, watching the metrics climb, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Morgan. This is Brad from Keystone's DevOps team. Hey, weird question, but did you write something recently? There's this paper going around and..." I hung up. 20 minutes later, another call. This time I recognized the number Eli Park. "Morgan, I'm sorry to bother you. I know things ended badly, but I really need your help. There's this paper about cascade failures, and it's describing exactly what I'm seeing in our system. Performance is down 30% since we pushed the new optimization update, and I don't work there anymore." "Eli," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Remember." I know, but you built this thing. I've been trying to understand your documentation, but there are dependencies I can't trace, validation systems that don't make sense. And now with this paper suggesting these exact vulnerabilities, sounds like you need to talk to Trey. He's the one with fresh perspectives, right?" The desperation in his voice was almost pitiful. "Trey doesn't understand the technical details. He just keeps saying to fix it before the investor demo. Morgan, please, I'll pay you as a consultant." Keystone's legal made it very clear that I'm no longer part of the team. I wouldn't want to violate any agreements. I paused, letting him hear the smile in my voice. "Good luck, Eli." I spent the rest of the day monitoring tech forums and industry Slack channels. The paper was spreading like wildfire. Someone had even started a GitHub repo to test the vulnerabilities I'd outlined. Though without access to Pathfire's specific implementation, they were just stabbing in the dark. But Keystone wasn't stabbing in the dark. They were living it. Tuesday brought the news I'd been waiting for. TechCrunch ran a small piece, "AI Startup Keystone Dynamics Postpones Series C Demo," citing technical optimizations. Buried in the third paragraph was the golden quote from an anonymous source. "Performance issues following recent updates have raised concerns about the stability of their core technology." I screenshot the article and texted it to Lena with a single emoji. That evening, I met with my old colleague Raj for drinks. He still worked at Keystone, and after his third beer, the truth came pouring out. "It's a disaster. Morgan, complete meltdown. The inference engine is returning garbage data, but only under specific load conditions exactly like that paper described. Trey's been screaming at engineering all week. He even brought in outside consultants, but they can't figure it out without understanding the original architecture." "Shame," I said, sipping my wine. The worst part, Arkstone Biotech was ready to sign a 3-year contract. Their team ran a proof of concept last week, and the results were so bad they pulled out entirely, said the system was fundamentally unstable. I kept my face neutral, but inside, fireworks were exploding. Arkstone had been Keystone's whale client, the one that would validate their entire business model. "There's talk that Victor Damani is reconsidering his fund's position," Raj continued. "You know, the VC guy who led their Series B, he's asking hard questions about the tech stack." "Victor Damani." I filed that name away. "But here's the really stupid part," Raj said, leaning in conspiratorially. "Brad found your old development notes in a shared drive, the real ones, not the simplified versions you gave Eli. He thinks he can reverse engineer the fixes from them. Trey actually approved it, said something about how you were always part of the team and your work was company property." My wine glass stopped halfway to my lips. They were trying to use my own documentation to fix the problems caused by firing me. The audacity was breathtaking. "Interesting," I said carefully. "Though I wonder if those notes will help without understanding the underlying principles." Raj laughed bitterly. "That's what I told them. But Trey's desperate. the boards breathing down his neck. I left the bar that night with a new understanding. They weren't just failing, they were flailing. And in their desperation, they were about to make things so much worse. Because those old notes Raj mentioned, they were from version 1 of my architecture, before I'd refined it, before I'd solved the really hard problems. If they tried to implement those solutions on the current system, without understanding how the architecture had evolved, well, that cascade failure I'd theorized about was going to look like a gentle tumble compared to what was coming. Talia called me at 8 a.m. sharp on Wednesday. "I've been following the Keystone situation," she said without preamble. "That paper about cascade failures, that was you, wasn't it?" I didn't confirm or deny. We both knew the answer. "I showed your Vanta documentation to my board yesterday. They want to meet you. More importantly, Victor Damani wants to meet you." My coffee mug froze at my lips. Damani, the VC who funded Keystone. The same. He's shopping for new investments after what he calls concerning technical developments at Keystone. When I mentioned I knew the original architect of Pathfire who'd built something better, he cleared his calendar. An hour later, I was sitting in RiveLogic's conference room, my laptop connected to their projector. The room smelled like possibility and fresh paint, a real startup, not Keystone's corporate theater. Talia made the introductions. "Morgan Blake, meet Victor Damani. Victor, this is the engineer I told you about." Victor Damani looked exactly like his photos, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, wearing a vest that probably cost more than my rent, but when he leaned forward to shake my hand, his grip was firm and his smile genuine. "Ms. Blake, I've heard interesting things about you, some from Talia, some from other sources." His eyes glinted. "I understand you have something to show me." I opened my laptop and pulled up Vanta. For the next hour, I walked them through my architecture, the elegant solutions to problems Pathfire stumbled over, the self-optimizing algorithms that learned from their own performance, the distributed processing that actually delivered on the promises Keystone's marketing team made. Victor asked sharp questions, real technical questions, not the buzzword soup I'd grown used to from VCs. He understood not just the what, but the why. "This validation system," he said, pointing at my screen, "it prevents the cascade failures described in that recent paper." "It doesn't just prevent them," I said. "It makes them mathematically impossible. The architecture is self-healing. And you built this independently." Every line, nights and weekends over 2 years. My employment contract only covered work done on company time with company resources. Victor exchanged glances with Talia. "Can you demonstrate performance metrics?" I pulled up my benchmarks. Vanta processing the same dataset that had taken Pathfire 3 hours. Time to completion 52 minutes. Accuracy 97% versus Pathfire's 81%. Resource usage 40% lower. "Jesus Christ," Victor muttered. Talia leaned forward. "Here's what we're proposing. Morgan, RiveLogic licenses Vanta for our diagnostic systems. You come on as chief architect, not just implementing but continuing development, full attribution, your name on every deployment." And Victor added, "I'd like to discuss additional investment, not in RiveLogic and you, in Vanta as a standalone platform that could be licensed to multiple companies." My heart was racing, but I kept my voice steady. "What about Keystone?" Victor's smile turned sharp. "What about them?" "They fired the architect of their core technology. They're struggling with performance issues they clearly don't understand. Their lead client just walked away. That's not my problem anymore. Actually,